The Clemson Tigers have generated a ton of hype this offseason, and for good reason, as in my opinion, this is the most talented team Dabo has had since that 2018 year where they went undefeated and won the national title. The big question is, will they live up to those expectations? And in today's video, we'll be talking about all that and more as I preview this Clemson team. We will be covering the roster with my roster grades, and at the end of the video, I will give my season prediction for the Clemson Tigers, all that and more after this. With that intro out of the way, welcome into the video, everyone. Hope you all will enjoy this one. And I want to start out by talking about my offensive roster grades for Clemson. We'll work our way to the defense eventually, but I want to start off here with the offense. And here are my grades. At quarterback, I have A+, running back C+, receivers A, offensive line an A, and coaching an A as well. We'll start with quarterback. I gave it an A+ because, frankly, Cade Klubnik is my number one returning quarterback in the whole country. Klubnik really made some strides last season, throwing for over 3,630 yards through the air with a 63.4 completion percentage and a TD to INT ratio of 36-6. So some really impressive stats for Cade Klubnik as he goes into his final year with the Tigers. He also was second on the team in rushing yards with 463 and 7 touchdowns. So he really was a dual threat quarterback that was not afraid to run the ball, which is great. And part of the reason why I have him number one, now this is a bit of a down year for quarterbacks, is that's all I will say in terms of the quarterback class across the country. Nevertheless, this is my number one returning quarterback, so it makes sense for him to have an A+ rating. I cannot say the same about the running back room, which I gave a C+ grade to, and a lot of Clemson fans will give me heat for this, saying I don't know what I'm talking about or anything like that, but I give it a C+, not for the talent that's in that room, but for the lack of productivity that's in that room. They lost some really good runners in Phil Maffa and Jay Haynes last year, who were first and third respectively in rushing yards for them. They're probably going to be starting a true freshman running back in Gideon Davidson, and he comes in as the number one ranked running back in the country, very high 4-star. I get that. He's very talented, and I think that he'll do well in time, but you're sticking a freshman out there, true freshman at that, and he's expected to go make big plays even in week one against LSU. And the other running back for them, being Adam Randall, is a converted wide receiver. And I'm just not sure how the whole dynamic is really going to work at Clemson there with the running back room. Again, this is not a reflection of how talented the running back room is, because if it was based off of talent, then this grade would be much higher. But it's really based off of the lack of production in this room, and I do think that this grade will get better with time. Now, that being said, we go to a more positive note and look at the receivers, wide receiver, tight end there on your screen. I have that graded as an A. I think it's a top 5 room nationally. I did my top 5 wide receiver rooms. Clemson was on there. I think I ranked theirs third or second. I think it's a fantastic wide receiver room. It's definitely the best in the ACC by a large margin. Way better than Miami's. Way better than really anyone else's, in my opinion. The only one that would really have a say in that would be Georgia Tech, in my opinion, as they have a pretty good receiver room as well. But, this receiver room just blows everyone out of the water, even nationally, as they bring back their top 3 pass catchers in Antonio Williams, who had over 900 yards for them. They bring back TJ Moore, who had 650 yards for them, and Bryant Wesco, who's had over 700 yards for them, and that all 3 of them combined for 21 touchdowns last season, which was great. That's averages about 7 apiece, but Antonio Williams had more. He had 11. Wesco Jr. and Moore had 5 apiece as well there. Bottom line, this group has the talent and the experience necessary to be one of the best in the country, and I think that Antonio Williams will be a very high draft pick after this year. Now to the offensive line, they bring back 4 starters from last season, which is huge. Blake Miller, Walter Parks, Ryan Lithicum, and Tristan Lay all come back from last year, so that should really help them out in the pass blocking and the run blocking as well. And then coaching, this Riley offense really did work wonders last season. They were a top unit nationally. Last season, they ranked as the 11th best offense in the country. This offense has the potential to be top 10 this year as they, I think, got better and they gained valuable experience at different positions. But the big thing is they can be in they can have five wide receivers all they want. They can go in five wide all they want, and they'll be able to do that for most of the season. But when it comes down to the big games, I'm talking that LSU game. I'm talking games down the road against South Carolina. If you want to go to the college football playoff, if you want to win the ACC, you are going to play in some big games. Even the Georgia Tech game, I think it's going to be a very difficult game for them. They're going to have to run the ball effectively. They can play five wide with everyone else, but they're going to have to run the ball effectively versus really good opponents in order to beat those teams and really be a great team. So that's the big question mark that I have for them is if they can, and if they can do that, I really do think that they can be an awesome team. And I think that this coaching staff can really help elevate that. Moving on to the defense here, and this has to be one of the scariest front sevens out there in the country right now. Full period, full stop, in my opinion. At defensive line, I have A, linebacker A, corner and safety both B plus, and then coaching A there as well. At the defensive line, they have elite star power in this room. TJ Parker led Clemson in sacks last season with 11, if I'm not mistaken, and he was just a game wrecker last season. He was one of the best edge rushers last season, and he'll continue to be one of the best edge rushers this season as well. Then you bring back Peter Woods at that nose tackle, that defensive line position. He only had 3 sacks last season, but for a defensive tackle or really a nose tackle, it's very hard to get sacks. So for him to have 3 really good production out of him, and he will continue, and he'll have a more prominent role with this defensive line, and he will really elevate his game, in my opinion, and really be one of the best interior defensive linemen out there. And you bring in a transfer in Will Held from Purdue, which is very interesting in my opinion, because Purdue wasn't very good last season at all. Purdue was the laughingstock of the P4, them and Mississippi State, but they had a lot of really good players on that team. It speaks to how bad the coaching staff was, and I was out on Ryan Walters the whole time. But anyway, that's the topic for another video. But Will Held really produced there. He had some excellent numbers, and he looked great on film as well. So he comes in as a transfer. I know everyone, that's a shocker for Dabo that he actually brought in a really good transfer. He actually brought in 2 really good transfers. We're going to talk about the other one at the linebacker position later, but he brings in another one to go opposite of TJ Parker, and that's just brilliant in my opinion. This duo really reminds me of what Penn State had last year with Abdul Carter and Donnie Dennis Sutton. They had a really elite tier edge player, and then they had a really good one on the opposite side. So the really good one got a lot of, one-on-one matchups, a lot of, stuff like that. So I think that that's what Will Held's going to be there for. He's a really good pass rusher. He's not elite, but he's really good, and he's going to be taking advantage of a lot of teams trying to double up and really focus on TJ Parker. So that's what I really love about the dynamic on this defensive line. Then you move to the linebackers. I have that as an A as well. Wade Woodaz and Sammy Brown make for a killer duo, in my opinion. Very underrated. Not many people are talking about this duo, but they're really good. Wade Woodaz led the team in tackles last year with 82, had 3 sacks as well. Sammy Brown was second on the team in both tackles and sacks. He had 5 sacks and 80 tackles, plus 3 passes defended. So he was really good last year. Sammy Brown, a guy who I really enjoyed watching ever since he stepped onto the scene. And they brought another guy in Jeremiah Alexander out of the portal from Bama, who I think could be a really good rotational piece for them. Bottom line, I really like this linebacker room. Then now we shift our focus over to the secondary, where I don't have it as highly rated as the front 7. Again, I think this is one of the best front 7s in the country, if not the best one. I really do think it's one of the best front 7s in the country. And then you go to the corners. They have Avion Terrell, who will be their undisputed number 1 corner, and he was really good for them last season. He had a couple interceptions, and he's really stepping into a bigger role this year as the undisputed cornerback 1, and I think that he'll thrive for them. He's a brother of AJ Terrell, who I think is now with the Falcons, and he was a very good player in his time in college, and I think that he really brings a really physical element to his game, ball hawking skills, etc. I think that he can really do well there. Ashton Hampton is another guy who really could be a standout player this year, could really break onto the scene for them. And I think that this overall, it's a very solid room. I don't see much star power outside of Avion Terrell. And again, I really like Avion Terrell, but I don't know if he's really a star yet either. So this cornerback room, very solid. I rate it a B plus. Then you go to the safeties. Khalil Barnes is the name to watch in this safety room as he led the team in interceptions last season with 4, and he also had a ton of tackles as well. He had 61 tackles, which was toward the top of that leaderboard for Clemson. And again, he's a guy who I don't think is an outright star where his name is heard across the country. I think that his impact will be like Avion Terrell, where he's one of the most impactful players on this defense, one of the most important ones, but he's not really going to get the name brand recognition that he deserves across the country. But you and I know that he's going to be really good for them for this upcoming season. Ricardo Jones, I think, will also start. Kylan Griffin in that rotation as well. So I think that those guys are very solid players, but I don't think that this room really deserves a grade in my opinion. So I have it as a B plus. Then you go to coaching, and they brought in Tom Allen from Penn State as he made a lateral move to become the Clemson defensive coordinator. And in my opinion, he's a really good DC. You've seen me make throughout this video, if you've been watching all the way through, which I hope you have. I've made a couple of subtle Penn State references because I really like how this defense compares to last year's Penn State defense. They're excellent up front. They're one of the best front sevens in the country last season. That would have been Penn State, and I think that Clemson will be, again, like I said before, one of the best front sevens in the country. But last year Penn State struggled a little bit in the secondary, just a bit. Not anything too catastrophic, and I think that's how it's going to be this year at Clemson as well. And I think that he brings a physical element to this defense, and I think that he's going to really help them in tackling in space and stuff like that. He was very good at that at Penn State. So you bring in a guy who had a defense that was top 10 rated last season to a defense that has a ton of talent. But last season they ranked 69th in total defense. It was not very good at Clemson last year on defense. Yet they have the talent, and I think they have the skill to really break into that top. Even if their defense was top 35, with how good their offense is going to be, that could be a national championship team. If this defense gets to that top 25 level, they could definitely be a national championship team because the offense is going to be really good. So that's my thoughts on the roster. Let's now go to the schedule prediction. Okay, so we'll be taking this in two parts. The first part being the wins that I think that they will handily have. As you can see on your screen now, I would have that as Troy, Syracuse at home, at North Carolina, at Boston College, SMU, Duke, Florida State, and Furman. Right there, 8-0 for Clemson. The hardest game out of that, I think Syracuse is a very talented team. That now they have a killer schedule, so I don't know if their record will really match what they are as a team. That being Syracuse, I do think that Clemson wins that game by 10 to 15 points. North Carolina, that's going to be a tough road trip to Chapel Hill. I really don't know what North Carolina is going to be on offense. It's very much a mystery to me what they're going to be on offense. Defense, I think North Carolina is going to be really good, but that's a very bad matchup for North Carolina going up against Clemson, and likewise a very good matchup for Clemson going up against North Carolina, as Clemson will be able to shred that defense, and I don't really necessarily think that North Carolina will be able to keep up on offense, so that'll be a handily won game by Clemson. And then Boston College, not going to be a very good team this year, in my opinion, not too much of a home atmosphere. Clemson win that game by 20 plus. SMU, very tricky team to place this year. I do think that Clemson will win that game. Duke, again, one of those teams that has consistently won over the past couple of years, and I think they'll continue to do that, but not against Clemson. Florida State, another one of those teams that's going to be really unpredictable. You see a lot of that in the ACC this year. Clemson will win that one fairly handily, and then Furman, we don't even need to talk about that. So now let's get to the rest of the predictions. And here you guys have it. You can finally see my prediction for the Clemson Tigers. I have them finishing 11-1, 8-0 in conference, finishing first in the ACC. First of all, I think they will beat LSU. I recently put out a game preview for this game between Clemson and LSU. I will link it down below. I highly encourage you watch that game in order to get all my thoughts on that game, because it's going to be one of the best in that week 1 slate. And then I think they do beat Georgia Tech on the road. Georgia Tech is a bad matchup for them, in my opinion, but I do think that Clemson will eke out of there with a victory. I think it'll be very close. And then on the other side of the bracket, you have at LSU, at Louisville. And Louisville is always a tough out, and they're always very tough to play at home. But I think that Clemson matches up with them very well. And then South Carolina, that South Carolina game, that's going to be a raucous environment down there. Clemson wasn't able to beat them last year at home, and I'm very high on South Carolina as a team. So I think that Clemson drops that one. But don't fear, Clemson fans. You are back in that ACC title game and looking to win it for the second year in a row to make a deep playoff run. I will be putting out my 12-team playoff prediction video very soon, so you want to be notified when that comes out, because Clemson, in my opinion, will be there in some form or fashion. So anyway, that is the end of the video. So thank you so much for watching. And I do highly encourage you, in order to stay updated with my channel, because a lot of Clemson stuff I've already touched on with my quarterback rankings and my wide receiver rankings. I've already touched on Clemson before. This is my first full-blown video on them, which I think really will do well, thanks to you guys. And then I think that they'll be featured in many videos up ahead. So you don't want to miss it, Clemson fans. And if you're just a fan of college football, I totally get it. I put myself in that category, as I like to make these videos on all the different teams in college football. So with that being said, long-winded way of saying please subscribe to the channel, as it would really help me out. Without further ado, I will leave you, and I will see you in the next one.